Hello, this is Dr. Tirrell. This is the multi-page document tutorial video. So we're going to be looking at how to pull together a multi-page document. We've been looking heretofore at single-page stuff like covers. What about documents that stretch multiple pages, particularly print documents? That's what we're going to be looking at. So our goals, we want to get some experience with typesetting. So a typesetter is a specific kind of program that pulls together text and images. The industry standard is Adobe InDesign. So we'll be looking at that and an open source comparable program called Scribus. We also want to get some experience creating the actual multi-page documents. So we've been looking at single page stuff. How do you pull together things that have multiple pages? And then also we want to get some work with styles. So what styles are, and I've got paragraph and character there, it's a way to treat, in this case, text as a unit, a kind of thing. So in a multi-page document, there are different kinds of things, right? Body paragraphs, headers, captions, bullet lists, paragraphs that follow headers, which may be slightly different than body paragraphs. All of these things are units. Now, because of word processors, we tend to treat these things just on the individual level. So if you want to change the font, you tend to select it and then change it all as a thing. But what happens if the font needs to be changed for a particular kind of thing, right? Emphasized word. You're gonna have to go through every single page and try and find that, and you can make a mistake, right? What if every caption needs to be changed? You have to go through every page, only select the captions. It's not tenable. So the way to work is with styles, and you know how we've been talking about design objects the entire semester. That's how we think of things, is as groups of stuff, things with categories. That's what styles are, and they allow us to change text in one place. We explain to the machine, this is how this kind of thing should be set up, and then it handles it all the way throughout. You don't have to worry about human error, really. So that's what we're going to be doing. Let me just back out of this. So let's go ahead and jump into InDesign. This is what its interface looks like. And it can seem kind of intimidating, like a lot of these professional tools. The good news is, when we have a task to accomplish, it gives us sort of an excuse to figure out how to do those specific things. And then your knowledge can kind of grow laterally from there, It's not like we're using all of this stuff all of the time. All of these things kind of have situated uses. So, it looks kind of intimidating, but it is kind of similar to interfaces we've seen before in Adobe products, and it's not as though you have to be responsible for every potential tweak that's up here. So the first thing we want to do is go to File, a new document here. If you just start up InDesign, which it can take a while to load, by the way, generally it'll show you this new document prompt anyway. And its units, its width and height here, those might be in points instead of inches. If that's the case, you can just go to Edit, Preferences, and its units and increments. We've talked about this before. There are all kinds of ways to measure in design. Points is a very common one. Everybody knows what inches are, but inches are a large unit. We've only got 8.5 on a letter-sized width. So when you start getting into fine grain measurements, an inch isn't great because then we're talking fractions, right? Points are much smaller, so you can talk about them and not have to deal with weird fractions and that kind of thing. So by default, generally it's going to go into points. Inches are sort of more familiar, so if you're more comfortable with that, there's no problem at all with using inches. Then when we go to File, New Document, whoops. It'll be in the familiar 8.5 by 11. We've got presets here with letter and legal, but of course you can set that to whatever you want. You can put an arbitrary size in there. By default, it's going to go to facing pages. What that means is it's expecting this to be bound like a book. And as you probably noticed in a book, the left and right pages, or the recto and verso, those aren't actually identical in terms of how they're set up. You know, a lot of times the page number will be, for example, on the top left, on the left-hand page, the verso, and the top right in the right-hand page. So those aren't actually identical. We're not dealing with facing pages for this. Our pages are actually going to be the same. So we're going to uncheck that. It's not really a big thing. It's, you know, you can actually, even if they're facing pages, you can still make them look identical. But for simplicity and for accuracy, we're unchecking it. We can set our margins down here. They're a 1/2 inch. That's fine. So I'm just going to click OK. And that's what we've got here. This is the whole page. This little sort of magenta guide, that's our margin. You can go outside of it, but it's telling you that's, it's the margin guide. It's telling you that's where the margin is. So, you know, I open it up. If I just start typing, nothing happens, right? This is not a word processor. You can't just start typing. This is a place to assemble finished or more or less finished design objects. So text, graphics, those kinds of things. If I want to put text in here, which I do, I go over here to the text, or excuse me, the type tool. It looks like a capital T, and I can click, but that's not going to do anything. And in fact, I hit a special key there. What I have to do actually is drag my cursor here, click and drag, and then I can set a text box. Now I can start typing in here. This is not what you would do, though. You wouldn't sit down and start typing, you know, a paper or something in a typesetter. Because, you know, for example, like what's going to happen when you reach the bottom of this box, you're still making text, but it doesn't fit. You can tell because this little plus here, it's showing you that there's more than more content than is actually fitting in the box. So this is not a place to sit and type. It's a place to put mostly finished text. I'm going to just copy and paste from a lorem ipsum generator. Lorem ipsum, it's actually widely used in the design field. It's basically Latin placeholder text. It doesn't, the Latin actually doesn't mean anything. It's actually cut together text from a Latin source. So this is all actually gibberish even in Latin. It's just used as placeholder text or dummy text. And you can see I put, I think, 5 paragraphs worth in. Yeah, there it is. So right now this actually fits on the page. You can see if I adjust the text box, it reflows. It also hyphenates. We'll talk about that when we talk about styles, because you can turn that off depending on your needs. It's also left justified, but you can see it's not fully justified because the lines are uneven here on the right. So here's how we could set, you know, a page of text. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it again in the same thing, because that's going to give us now more text than actually fits on the page, right? So it doesn't automatically just make a second page. This isn't a word processor. We have to put in a second page up here under pages. And this icon is create new page. So now we've got page 1 and page 2. What we have to do is make another text box. And I'll make it the same size here, which is just to the margin. And you can see down here this little plus. If I click that, see how it now has the cursor's changed. It actually looks like the content. It has a little kind of thumbnail snapshot of the content itself. If I now go to another text box and click, see how it's changed to this link? That means those text boxes are now linked. If I make changes here, like I start, you know, dumping in more text or a bullet list or whatever, it's automatically flowed to the second page, well, to the linked box. Now that doesn't seem all that weird because, you know, if you use a word processor, it does that anyway. But keep in mind that this does function even when the text box changes, right? So the size has changed. You know, it's only taking up a corner here, but it's automatically flowed here. So we can even do something weird like put those both on the same page, right? And let me just shorten this way up. Right? Just make these fit on the same thing for tidiness' sake. And you can see, any changes that happen up here, it's going to flow automatically into the second page because these are linked. Okay, I'm just going to cut that out. So that's essentially how that works, that relationship between linked text boxes. I guess I can just use the same text since it's gibberish anyway. Let me make a second text box here. Okay, so let me link those two up. And one thing we can see is, uh-oh, hope that's not important. We'll check here in a little. You can actually maybe see this a little bit, and this is just a brief thing. We won't talk about this much, but the text frame itself, you can probably see this on the second page better. If I delete a lot of this text, you can see that it's actually, it's framed such that the text is at the top. What I mean is, let me go to text frame options here. The vertical justification, so the text here, it's going up to the top. You can, in the frame, actually do something like center this or justify it so it's using all of the available space. You may not use this too much. For the last page, certainly I do want this up at the top. For the first page here, maybe I actually do want to justify this. Let me just go to text frame options, because now it actually goes to the full length. Do you see the slight difference when I turn this on to top? See how it doesn't go all the way to the bottom? If I go to justify, it actually does. That does, of course, change your leading subtly. So you may not want to do that. I just want you to be aware that that capability is there. So now let's turn to styles. We're just dealing with text. We haven't moved any images in or anything. But let's talk about styles. So over here, we have paragraph styles and we have character styles. Right now, we don't have any. What that means is, as I mentioned, it's treating stuff as a unit. So let's say this is a standard body paragraph. I'm going to go ahead and make a new paragraph style. And I'm going to call it, it defaults to paragraph style 1. I'm going to call it, body paragraph, or maybe even just body. Now let's call it paragraph. Specificity never hurts. And I'm going to edit it here. And I have tons of options for what I can do. I'm not going to go into this stuff too much about what it's based on and what follows it, the next style. Let's look at basic character formats. So right now it's Minion Pro regular, it's 12 point. Let's say I wanted to set this to something like Trebuchet. And I have preview turned on, so it's going to change, in live time. And I'll change that down to 11. And my leading right now is set to auto, so it's going to 13.2, which is, a little bit over single space. Let's say I wanted to set that at 14, or even larger. Let's say 18. So now we can see the difference there. Although I'd never do that because that's weird for legibility. We can set things in here, including things like hyphenation, right? Right now it's hyphenating. Let's say I want to just turn off hyphenation. See, and now let's flip that back on. You can see right up here, words are getting hyphenated. A lot of times we don't want, it really depends on the situation, but a lot of times you don't want hyphenation for readability. I mean, that's a convention that's picked up from things like newspapers where space was such a super premium that you just didn't want to waste it. It's not quite as much of an issue for us. So I'm going to turn off hyphenation. But you could always turn it on and look at the fine-grained control you have over like words with at least how many letters. I mean, this is the thing that a typesetter does that a word processor doesn't. You have such bonkers control over every potential aspect. It's just, it can't be offered really anywhere else. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. There's all kinds of other stuff here, like do you want to keep it with the next couple of lines to avoid things like widows and orphans? That means a page break that just has a single line at the top or something like that. You deal with justification and the percentages of how you want that handled. Tabs, drop caps, the initial cap and its relationship to the baseline. All kinds of stuff. We're not going to get into that right now, but the capability is there. We just change basically the font and the leading. What that means is now when I designate anything as a body paragraph, like this paragraph right here, anytime I make any changes to that style, it's going to get reflected on all of them, right? So, whoops, the client wants that to be slightly larger font, right? So now it's changed there, and it's only changing those. The things that weren't marked as body paragraphs, like this, let's make a new one here and call this, specialty paragraph. This doesn't get changed. It may if it has a based on relationship, but I didn't set that up. I mean, right now these are completely autonomous. So, let's use a scripty font there, and we'll blow this up to 30 or whatever. Let's say we're using that for things like pull quotes or whatever. And if we were, we'd call it pull quotes. Right, so it's not as though I select all as I do in a word processor and change it. See, that's really sloppy. That's dealing with things. It's just format. We want to think semantically about what something is. A body paragraph, a pull quote, a caption, a bullet list, right? Down here, we've got this crazy list that I just kind of, hit those. I could put in a bullet list here. Let's call it bullet list items. And I can actually go down here to bullets and numbering. And you can see now how it's adding that bullet, and I can go to here and check, its tab position, which will scoot that in, the indent, because I do want that indented. First line indent, which is, hanging, I don't want to deal with that. Actually, I do, because I don't want it to look goofy. And here under indents and spacing, we can actually set even more fine-grained here to try and make sure that everything is balanced up. Anywho, I don't want to get into this. Oh, and this wasn't a bullet list item anyway. This is a body paragraph. So we'll select all of these and make these bullet list items. So now we've marked things as what they are, right? So that's what paragraph styles are. If you're talking about a single page document, you can do it. You don't really need styles quite so much because everything's right there. Nothing's going to get lost. But if we're talking about, as I was just doing a document that was 800 pages for a client, full of tables, and it was just a nightmare. And if I couldn't semantically demarcate what things are, any change that client wanted, and they wanted a handful, it would have been just impossible to manage. I would have, just driven myself insane. So that's what styles do. They allow us to format stuff by a category, by what it actually is. Now, character styles does the same thing, but it's a smaller grain size. We're talking about, words and letters. So let's make one. Let's call it, emphasized. You can do a lot of the same stuff. We don't want to actually set the font. Maybe we want to change the color to, well, let's just use this magenta. Underline, I guess. Nothing's set with this yet. And let's emphasize a couple of words here. And you can see what's happening, right? it's setting them with this magenta and this underline. And again, if I wanted to change that in a word processor, whoops, I added a unnecessary new one there. I'd have to go through and get each one individually, and it's bonkers. Let's just change this as a unit here by editing our character style. And what I'm going to do is now make these italic, right? Whatever the font family is, because perhaps this is a character that's going to be in different paragraph styles, which we could do. Let me preview that. I just want to make sure it's getting italicized, right? So let's go ahead and do that. In fact, put in one of our pull quotes. Oh, whoops. I don't want to do that. Let's make one of these emphasized as well. See? So it cuts across paragraph styles. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense how that works. That's when we're dealing with text. Styles are such a huge, important, useful thing. You take a few minutes to kind of figure out how those work. And if you're dealing with a long document, it revolutionizes how you work with stuff. Even with word processors, I mean, Word handles styles, it can do it. And even inside a word processor, if it manages styles, it's so fantastic. I mean, what you can even do is do a lot of your typing in a word processor, a long document, and then you can save it and import it here. You just go to File, Place, and you can select a Word document and click Show Import Options, and it'll let you import the styles that you actually used in Word, and it'll convert them to its styles, right? And that's such a time saver. You can just use the styles you're already using in Word and pull them into InDesign, and then just if you need to make changes, you change them as we just did there. Styles are just such a big thing in document design. I can't get over how fundamental they are, and also how they make your life so much easier. And we could quirk around a little bit more if we wanted to. We could here change the body paragraph. I mentioned this is left justified. What if we wanted this to be justified so it runs to both margins? Let's see, it's paragraph. It's not rules, justification. No. Let's see. Alignment, there we go. That's one issue is there's so many options. You kind of have to get into the practice of where things are. So there, I swapped it to full justify, and you can see how that's working now. It's running to the edge. Although I always think that's kind of a weird look, unless you really need the space, or you're working in columns. If if this were 2 columns, which we could do, we could either just structure this in terms of the, we could manually, make this into columns. You can actually set that up slightly differently, but we won't get into that right now. You could have a couple of textual columns and then have these links so they're flowing together. Right now they're not, so let's go ahead and link those. Right, and there actually justified text works pretty well. I'm going to go here to View and Screen Mode and Preview. That shows you what it looks like when printed. And see, that actually works really well. So, I mean, it's not like justification doesn't have its place. It's just situational, like everything else. Go to View, Screen Mode, Normal. Okay, so we've done a few things there. I'm going to go back to making this full page just because I want to tinker with some other things. Oh, before we get to inserting images, I did want to talk about master pages. In something like a word processor, you can put a heading or a footer and, a page number, and it just sort of recurs on every page. You can definitely do that in a typesetter here under Pages. You can set any number of master pages, and whatever you put there, you can associate individual pages with particular masters, and then any changes you make to that master will be reflected in that in all the associated pages. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So here, this is just our regular pages, if we go to our master page, I'm going to go ahead and insert a, put my name here. I'll make this right aligned, and I'll insert a, let's see, type, special character, marker, current page number. And there it's signified with an A, showing that that's a value. I'll put this up here in the corner, and I'm going to make this exactly up here under height, exactly 1/2 inch. So that means I've got 1/2 inch margins, but I want the body to actually start 1 inch down. So there's my master. I'm going to go back to page 1 here. And you can see it's already associated with that master. So this is already showing up. See how page 1, page 2, they're already associated with that, that master page. Any change I make here, so if I needed to add my full name for whatever reason, that's going to be reflected in your associated pages as well. Now, if for whatever reason you want to associate a particular page with a different master, you can do that. Apply master to pages. You can make separate masters. A lot of times you end up doing that with facing pages, right? You have a verso and a recto master, so you can set up a left and right and you handle them differently. Or just different documents require different pages. What if I needed a page that didn't have my name and a page number on it? So something that's just a big image, right? Sometimes you'll see that in magazines. I could make another master page, a B master page, for example, and just not have this stuff. And then for every page in my document that requires that association, let's say for whatever reason B, or excuse me, page 2, I can just associate apply master to pages 2, and I want it B. Now that different master is associated with it. Okay, so that's a big thing as well, how master pages work. And again, once you kind of figure out how those work, it is such a huge help. It's such a big part of document design, and it keeps you from having to make special case changes to everything, which you can do. I mean, if there was for whatever reason a need for me to make this one particular paragraph left justified, you can impose style overrides, is what they're called. It means this is still technically a body paragraph, but see how it has this plus? It means it's not completely a body paragraph. Something has overridden that style. It lets you know with this plus that, hey, there's something quirky with this. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just telling you this is not a pure body paragraph. If I wanted to clear that out, I can associate it back with that style, and it just fixes it. It just makes it, pure body paragraph. Hopefully that makes sense. We can talk about this in class, of course, but that's sort of how typesetting works. One last thing before we turn to Scribus and how this works, images, right? You can insert images here as you can in other programs. I'm just going to go up here to File and Place, and I've got a pre-prepared cat picture. You can use all kinds of different formats. You see there's so many here. I'm going to use a TIFF file. The reason why is because I want to use the same one in Scribus, and TIFF is basically the standard file format for pixel-based or raster images. It stands for tagged image file format. You can use stuff like Photoshop, but not everything's going to interpret that the same way. TIFF is the file format for this kind of work. It preserves high resolution. It's not lossy like a JPEG or something like that you would not use. You're going to be using TIFFs. I've got import options turned on, although they're not going to be that many here. So now my cursor is loaded up. I'm just going to plop our kitty right here. It's at the right size, 3 inches. It's 300 dpi. You can see right now the image is, it's in a separate, not layer exactly because there are layers. It's basically, it's on the same layer, but it's sitting above our textual content. That's the way to think of it. Now, if I want this image in here and I want the text to flow around it, I can certainly do that. Yeah. So let's say if I want to just appear in the corner, up here is an easy way to do this, where it's got no text wrap, no bounding, or excuse me, wraparound bounding box around the shape of the image itself, which in this case is a square, so there'd be no difference, or jumping this thing altogether, which would mean text above and below. I'm just going to turn on the bounding box, and you can see it automatically now flows around it. By default, it's set to, get right up to that bounding box. And if we look at this under screen mode preview, it looks a little weird, right? I mean, we want some margin around this thing. So you can do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, up here, this thing that looks like 9 squares, it's the reference point between the frame and the image. Because we can stretch this image and notice that it gives us a margin, right? Because what the text is responding to is the text frame, because we set this to the bounding box. So we can actually just sort of draw around this ourselves, if I wanted to do this or whatever. If I right click here, I can reset the frame, fit frame to content. If I do that, it's going to go right back to around my image, right? So it's not hurting anything. It just gives us some control about setting the frame so that things like, text margins are appropriate. If you drag it, it's a little imprecise. So what I usually tend to do is I tend to, well, first I'm going to make sure it's precisely here on the content. And then I do it numerically up here. So I'm going to move my width here numerically and my height numerically. And this little, 9 squares, what that means is basically the positioning of the content, the cat picture, with regard to the changes you're making. So I had it up in the top right, and so you can see that it stretched out the frame to the left and to the bottom. Let's click that up another hair, no pun intended. And we can look at this again under the preview and see that's a much nicer look, right? And in fact, this is a place where justification works great because it's going right up into the border. So that's essentially how graphics works. This is going to be useful for probably our manifesto, potentially our business card. You might use a typesetter, maybe our logo, although that might you might just use a vector design tool for that, or something else, but probably vector design. But that's how this works. You can save this, save frequently, and it's going to save as an InDesign file. When you're ready to export, by default, it's going to spit out PDFs aplenty because, this is Adobe and they have a history with PDF. They developed it. They don't actually control it per se anymore, the file format, but they developed it. So you can always export to a PDF from here. That's the gist of what I wanted to cover. Briefly, then I just wanted to turn to Scribus and sort of show how it works. So this is its interface. And again, the first time you launch Scribus, it will take a long time to load because it has to build a font profile, and that takes quite a while. Every other time you launch after that, it will not take that long. But the first time you might think, gosh, is it broken or what is it hung? It actually just takes a long time to build a font profile. So don't give up hope. Just be aware that's going to happen. Now Scribus, sort of like as Photoshop is to GIMP, Scribus is to, InDesign is to Scribus. It's the open source equivalent. It can do basically the same stuff. It doesn't operate in quite the same way, and it can't do everything. There is a bit of discrepancy because typesetters are such, that is an in-depth tool. It's asking a lot of an open source equivalent to try and replicate everything that's going on in a typesetter. But anywho, here's how it works. I'm going to do new, and this is the same kind of question. when we opened a document in InDesign, it's just set up a little differently, right? So single page, double-sided, that's basically facing or single document. We want single page. It defaults to points, but we can change this to inches right here, right? And it defaults to A4 because that's really the most common image, or excuse me, page size. It's international. We don't use it much, just like everything else. We don't use it much in this country, but every other country in the world uses it as their standard. We use letter. So I'm going to scroll down. It's in here, and you can see it's 8.5 by 11. You can see the margins are a little weird because they're set for A4. Change them to 1/2 inch. And there we go. And it looks basically the same, right? I mean, we've got the artboard, we've got the margin guide there, and it functions very similarly. If I want to insert text, I just go up here to insert and insert text frame. So I can draw one here, and it works very much the same. You know, I can type, I can copy and paste, I can import. It works very much as InDesign does in this way. I'm actually going to turn on, let's see, snap to guides. Otherwise, it doesn't automatically, when you try and put this up in the corner, it doesn't automatically do it. So you can see it's very much the same. If you want to link text boxes, oopsie, I moved it. You can just draw another one. And this tool up here that says link text frames, that's the one you want. So I'll click that. And then I just click the second one. So that process basically was, I just need to make sure this first one is clicked. Then I click link and click the second one. Right? There, there, there. Now those are associated. Any changes I make up here are going to automatically reflow. Similarly with pages, you can go up here to page and insert, and it'll ask you, this looks a little complicated, but basically it's just saying how many pages do you want, where do you want them placed, we want them at the end, what master page do you want associated with it, you know, the size, because you can actually put in pages of different sizes. So here now we've inserted a second page, so I could always just, you know, drag the text box down here and set it up. Same. Right, so very much like InDesign. It's not that different, really. It's just some of the things look a little different. I actually find Scribus a little more, for new folks, a little more friendly, a little less intimidating, because, you know, just look at the interface, right? Tons of stuff. You know, 3 sides are covered with all these panels and numbers and everything. Scribus basically just has one. You know, it's just got the top. There aren't that many things you can do, seemingly. So it just seems a little friendlier. Let's see. Oh, master pages. Let's see. That is, I think, edit, master pages. And right now, by default, you have normal because everything has to be associated with some master. So you can't get rid of the normal. But let's go ahead and make a new one here. And we'll call it, you know, main master. How about? Okay. And now when we edit this master, it is very much the same thing. I can't remember where it keeps its page numbers. Is it here? Yeah, I think that's it. And let's see, property, because I want this actually over. Yeah, I wanted that right aligned. This properties thing does a lot of the job of the panels in InDesign, right? It's where you can position things with X, Y, Z. You can change the shape as we did with that image. Text is a special one for text frames, right? So let's put that there. Let's change the X, Y, Z so that its height is only 1/2 inch. Ooh, way too much. Let's just type it in. Here we go. So there's my my master page there. Now when I close that out, it goes back here. Let's just associate this with main master, current page, okay. And there you can see it's been applied, which means I have to adjust accordingly. Right there. So same kind of thing. You can change master pages. You can insert images. Let's see, insert image frame. It wants me to draw it before. And what this does is it marks out the space of where the frame actually, where the image actually is. And we can set the text flow here under shape. It was like that, right? Was going through. We just wanted to use the frame shape here. What we should actually do, of course, I'm going to right click and do get image because I don't know exactly what those dimensions are. So cat tiff. Here's our kitty. Adjust frame to image. There we go. And we'll make sure it's right there on the edge. Oh, we need to set our paragraph styles, don't we? Edit styles, and we've got paragraph and character styles just as in InDesign. Let's add a new paragraph style, and we'll call this body. And we've got fixed line spacing right now, which is 15. You can do automatic just as, you know, InDesign has. I'm going to do fixed of, you know, 17. Oh, and we wanted alignment. And you can see this is basically all we've got, properties and character. What that means, and those are the main things you use in InDesign anyway, but you don't have that super hyper level focus and detail that you have with InDesign here in paragraph styles. What it's basically focusing on is, you know, the actual structure of the paragraph. So this can be a little less intimidating. There are also just honestly a lot fewer options. So we wanted justification. Apply, and we're done. Okay, so the paragraph, text, style settings. There it is, paragraph style, body. Right, so there it's, and let me just set these others. Body. So that's similar. And let's set our margin here. Let's see, we'll do that. And then you can actually fine grain this over here. So let's do 3.2. And height, we've got, 4.3-ish. Okay. And we can do a view preview mode, and that's what that looks like. So the takeaway here is you can do basically the same stuff, definitely the same stuff we just covered. It's a little bit different. I find it actually a little bit friendlier because everything's sort of stripped down, and in truth, you don't have the same amount of fine-grained control, but we don't need most of that stuff. Most of the stuff we're doing, you're not going to need, 80% of what InDesign offers anyway. You can, of course, save it here, and you can export to PDF. It uses a processor to do that. So that's the gist of how this works. We'll be looking at this in class, but that's how multi-page documents works. Multi-page documents work. Remember the important things here. Styles are absolutely crucial. Master pages are absolutely crucial. And I mean, it's not like they're just important. They make your life and job so much easier. It's tough to think how you do it without it. Although people did, of course, for a long time. So that's those. We'll talk about these things in class, and I will see you again.